Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. This is Rosh, and this is a video series I'm putting together called AxeFX III Basics. So I want to thank each and every one of you guys for liking, subscribing, and commenting below. If you have any topics you would like me to cover, I would be more than happy to in the future. So a little about me. I'm an LA-based guitar player and guitar tech. Some of my clients include Etheridge, Leppard, Steve Vai, Dweezil Zappa, Bush, Perfect Circle, and more. In this episode, I want to give back to the Fractal community and show some of my approaches on how to build presets. So in this episode, we're going to cover Overdrive using the drive block. So one of the precursors to this video is I would definitely recommend watching the boost video that I did. So it's going to be in this playlist at somewhere. So watch that first so you can see some of the principles I use when I'm dialing in Overdrive. So okay, so I have two scenes here, and basically one scene is the Fender Twin, and then one scene is the USA Clean. Okay, so very similar tones. I'm using the same cab IR, which is like a deluxe reverb IR from the factory, and nothing to it. And then I'm using this London plate just to add a little bit of reverb to the guitar tone. So I wanted to show some of my approaches on how to really dial in an overdrive and how to make sure that it is at the proper level, because I see a really interesting approach a lot. So let's reset this channel and let's use the Tube Screamer. So okay, so we have the Tube Screamer T808 mod, and what I see a lot of people doing is that they dial the drive and the tone where they want it. And then they go, ooh, that's too loud. You know, so they then adjust the volume. And they go, okay, cool. And then they get that and realize, oh, it's still too loud. Okay. And then they go, well, the tone kind of changed a little bit, and so they add more gain. But it's not really smooth. You hear that kind of hairiness on the tone. There's this kind of weird, awkward fuzz around the notes, right? So let's reset this block and actually show you how I approach it. So one of the things that you're looking for with an overdrive is the same principle as when I showed some of the boost stuff in the boost video. You're trying to hit the input of whatever amp you're playing into a little bit harder with the pedal, and then you're supposed to add drive on top of that to come up with like either a lead or rhythm sound. So if you watch the rock lead video that I did as well, you can see that I use the Tube Screamer a lot with the drive all the way at 0 and the level all the way at 10 to boost the input of the amp. So here's generally what I do. I usually put the overdrive around 0.5 or even off, depending on the pedals. Some pedals won't send any volume if the drive is all the way off, but I just got used to 0.5. Okay, and now we have this kind of boosted tone. And what you're listening for is you're going to try to level out the volume between the drive on and off, between the amp, with the drive on and off. Now, the one key thing to listen to is that what you're hearing as perceived loudness is not just like the EQ of the pedal. So, for example, Tube Screamers have a very pronounced mid-range bump. So what you're hearing is just the mids being brought forward a little bit. The amp actually, to my ear, sounds a little bit louder than with the pedal on. So I'm going to actually boost it up a little bit. And you notice that if, like, for example, I do an extreme boost right here, you'll notice that the amp overdrives a lot without getting significantly louder. So that would be almost like the boost video that I had. So let's start at 6. So maybe a little less. Yeah, somewhere around there. And again, to one's ear, you might think, oh man, the difference is huge. With the drive pedal on, it's really loud. But again, meter the difference. Okay, it's just a little above, tickling in the red, and then let's meter that with the drive pedal. You notice that it's maybe 1 or 2 dB louder. It's not significantly louder. Your ears definitely play tricks on you like this. So one thing to keep in mind is always meter with the pedal on and off. Okay, they're almost the same volume, the drive pedal being just a hair louder. And in my opinion, you should always have the drive pedal just a hair louder than your clean tone. Okay, now that you got the volume dialed in that way, then the next step is to add the drive. So now you add some drive to where you want it to get a little bit more sustain, a little bit more smoothness. Most of the overdrive sounds that I prefer don't have any hair around the note. It just sounds like this smooth, amp cranked up kind of sound. And you notice that where the drive is now is significantly less. It was around 7 when we were doing it the quote-unquote old way. And you'll notice that I don't even need that much drive to get this really smooth singing warm overdrive. I'd probably add just the hair more. And you notice there's no hair around the notes. It's not like fuzzy. And I mean, even cranking the drive up more at this point, the amp is really overdriving because you're boosting the input stage of this with this. And the drive signal that you're adding is just gain on top of the pedal. And it's starting to kind of fuzz out there a little bit. And then it's really touch sensitive. You can roll off your volume knob. So you'll notice that that's like a much warmer, much smoother overdrive tone than, again, getting the tone right and then trying to adjust the level. So let's take those same settings to an amp like the USA Clean. So one of the problems with an amp like this is the amp doesn't really break up even if you drive the front end of it. So if we, let's say, reset this channel, turn the drive all the way off, and then turn the level and keep cranking the level, the amp's just going to keep getting louder and louder and louder. It doesn't really overdrive. So you can see I'm clipping the input right here. So you run into some problems using that same method. So, but the method still works. So for example, let's go back to 5. Okay. And again, you're listening for not the EQ bump, but you're trying to hear that the amp is the same volume when the pedals drive all the way off and the pedals off. Yeah, so we'll definitely need to bring that down. Yep. Oops, don't want that. And so you see we have to bring the level way down because we can't really boost the input of an amp like this. So probably right here. Okay, so probably around here. And then with amps like this, since they don't break up, you're not getting any of the overdrive tone from the front end of the amp being hit really hard with this drive pedal, and you have to compensate with more drive. So you'll find with amps like this, you'll definitely have to use more overdrive. So if we want that singing sustain, we still have to add more drive. So you notice that with overdrives like this, once you start getting past a certain threshold, you start adding that fuzz to the notes. So I want to show something in the advanced tab that'll kind of hopefully help compensate with that. Certain overdrive pedals have a dry level knob. And what that means is that at 100%, that means 50-50 is a 1-to-1 ratio of the dry signal with the overdriven signal being passed into the front end of the amp. It can be a little hard to hear depending on the amp that you're in, but basically it's kind of like half clean, half dirty going into this amp. So if you turn this to 0, you'll just get the pure overdriven tone being sent into the front end of the amp. Versus here. See how if you listen really closely, you can kind of hear this like clean signal that's mixed in with the overdriven signal. So if you run into this situation where you still want like some overdrive, but you don't want to have that clean signal mixed in, definitely turn this to 0. And you can do that. So, and then if you turn this up to 200, then it's like the drive going into the, or I'm sorry, the clean signal, more of it going into the front end of the amp. It's something to experiment with, but I don't really use that side of it. I definitely do go to 0 at certain points. Some models of overdrives default with this on. So for example, I think that one does. Yeah. So the esoteric ACB, let's do blues overdrive, 0. So you'll find that, again, some of them default with 100%, some of them default with that. But this can help with certain pedals. So again, here are the settings. And again, you hear that kind of like smooth, warm overdrive without any of that fuzz around the notes. But unfortunately, because this type of amp doesn't clip in overdrive very much, even if you dig in, it just gets louder. Versus something like the Fender Twin. Or like a deluxe reverb or any of those Fender style amps. You'll notice that you have to compensate with this drive a little further up. Now, if you go back to the Fender Twin with these same settings, now it's going to be too fuzzy. As opposed to the settings that we had before, where we're somewhere like this. So that is going to cover it for this video. Hopefully that'll help some of you guys out trying to get your overdrive sound kind of dialed in. And keep in mind, this is more for an overdrive sound. There's some overdrives in the drive block that are definitely not overdrives. They're more like distortions. So, for example, pedals like the Ruckus or the Rat and those kind of pedals and some of the fuzzes are not, you wouldn't want to really take this approach that way. You can borrow some of the ideas from this. But either way, hopefully this helps some of you guys get a nice overdrive sound. If you guys have any questions, by all means, feel free to contact me. And if you have any requests for any future videos, I would be more than happy to make some. In the meantime, take care, and I'll see you guys then.